Welcome to the Call Your Shot podcast, your weekly sports recap podcast where we break down the hottest headlines, dissect the latest injuries, and serve up our own hard-hitting analysis of the past week in sports. But that's not all. We're not just here to talk about the past, we're here to predict the future as well. On the Call Your Shot podcast, we boldly predict the outcomes of the upcoming week's games.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening. This is the Call Your Shot podcast with your hosts, Alex Harris and Drew Moore. And, the season's finally over. It's very unfortunate, but we still had a great game. The Super Bowl. Chiefs ended up getting it 25-22. Patrick Mahomes, MVP, as we expected. So, Drew, what are your overall thoughts on the game? And, yeah.
Well, I think this is going to be the last time that we see Patrick Mahomes as an underdog for the foreseeable future.
Hope so.
And yeah, it was super painful to make this pick only because of the way that I like to do my betting is being a data-driven contrarian bettor, as my good friend would say. Being a contrarian bettor is the best, not necessarily the best, but it's one of the better ways, no pun intended, to tackle the market. And I got that from Josh Applebaum, so shout out to him. But moral of the story is
jeans.
Exactly. Moral of the story is, the bet splits on this game, like if you were to tell me you put money on San Francisco, I couldn't be mad at you because that would be the data-driven contrarian way to bet on this game. That would have been, 42% of the money, and 42% of the bets were on San Francisco. And then you had 58% of the bets and 58% of the money on Kansas City Chiefs. And the whole time leading up to the Super Bowl, you look to the person to your left, you look to the person to your right. Who do you have winning the Super Bowl? Kansas City. Who do you have winning the Super Bowl? Kansas City. Actually, I parlayed it with Patrick Mahomes to win the Super Bowl, or to win the MVP as well. So, everyone and their mom was on Kansas City. All the Swifties made some money last night too.
Yeah.
And, but, ultimately, I do think that the right side was the 49ers, at least in the beginning of the game. It looked like that was the sharp play, but then you had a bunch of injuries go against the 49ers. And I mean, honestly, that's just the story of their whole, past 5 years or so, is they just get bitten by the injury bug at the worst possible time. You have Greenlaw going out with a fluke incident, and that's like your primary guy, the green dot guy in the secondary or in the second level of the defense in the middle linebacker position. And then from that point on, that's when you saw Travis Kelce start to kind of go off, because before that, halfway through the third quarter, Kelce had been pretty silent. Greenlaw ruptures Achilles. I don't want to speculate, but it looked like a ruptured Achilles.
They confirmed it. Shanahan
confirmed
it after the Super Bowl.
Not nice, but yeah.
All right.
I was like, you know what I meant. But
yep.
So ruptured Achilles, and then I don't even know who the backup guy is, but he came in and was getting cooked by Kelce, and that's one of the faults of the 49ers is that the first level players that they have, first string players, they're dominant, they're elite, and there's Pro Bowlers all over the field. But when it comes to the backups and having some depth on your team for those injuries, it's pretty suspect once it gets past that the starters there. So
yeah, it was kind of weird. So like as you mentioned, I think that for all the people that did bet on the 49ers, or the smart money, I guess, as you want to keep saying, it seemed to go exactly how they planned in the first half. It was just a matter of fact of like they seemed to be controlling the game throughout. They were running with Christian McCaffrey. Purdy was still, he looked good overall throughout the entirety of the game, but Purdy was playing well. They were making Mahomes stress and forced him to make some, errant passes. But it seemed like even though the 49ers were in control of the game, it was still only like a 3-point game. And then it was still only a 10-point game, and it was only a 7-point game going into halftime. So I feel like the 49ers while be it they took control in the first half, even though some fluke plays on both sides. You had the Christian McCaffrey fumble in the first half or first drive, and then you had the Pacheco fumble and all that kind of stuff. The 49ers took control of the game. It was just that they couldn't capitalize necessarily on all of the advantages that they had. And then you go into, the situation where you have Patrick Mahomes down double digits in the Super Bowl, and then it's kind of a scary story because then you come out in the second half, and as you mentioned, Travis Kelce only had one reception for 1 yard in the first half, and then Greenlaw gets hurt early in the third quarter, and then he finishes with like 9 receptions for nearly 100 yards. So I just think that overall it was a matter of the 49ers not necessarily being able to capitalize when they did have control, and then ultimately when the rubber needed to meet the road, which is why we both betted on the Chiefs. If I have to choose somebody late in the fourth quarter or in overtime to win me a game, I would choose Patrick Mahomes. And then I also feel that, unfortunately, Shanahan, who, as we mentioned to start the show, lost 2 straight overtimes now. One is the offensive coordinator for the Falcons against Tom Brady, and another one against Patrick Mahomes, did not necessarily call the greatest game, especially when we're in the fourth quarter and overtime with the new overtime rules, choosing to receive the ball first as opposed to receiving the ball second, and then basically knowing what you need to do to score and having 4 downs to play with, and all of those unfortunate mistakes kind of boiled over. And as I said, I think that Purdy played actually very well. It was just, kind of just going against the baby goat on the other end. It's kind of tough. So,
I mean, okay, yeah, okay. I'll say this. I'll say this. Shanahan as a coach is amazing when it comes to scheming up a game plan.
offensive
Um,
genius.
yeah, guru for sure. The problem is the adjustments that he makes either throughout the game or lack thereof, is kind of his downfall, essentially. But also, I mean, mathematically speaking, was it a bad idea to, get the ball first in overtime with the new rules and everything? Maybe. But,
Yes.
hold on. But if you have, because he said he wanted to have the ball third, and that puts him in a position to basically control your destiny at that point, to where all you need to do is just hold the defense to a field goal, which for the most part they had been doing the entire game, because they only scored 1 touchdown, and that 1 touchdown came on a fluke play where it hit the heel of one of their punt return men, and then they tried to pick it up off of that, and then they muffed
Mm-hmm.
it, then they got the ball down there within inside the 20-yard line. So the
Mm-hmm.
only touchdown that they really had in the game, other than the game-winning touchdown, obviously, well, even then, um, they had optimal field position in those situations. So for the most part, again, they had held Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to primarily field goals. And I, I had a small bet on Harrison Butker to win MVP, and I was looking pretty damn good for a little bit there,
Patrick Mahomes
like
post game, he's like, "Yeah, Harrison kicking it from 70 yards type stuff." But
literally. And so,
I,
b- but I I do think that you get the ball first in the second half, first in overtime, and then if you score, that's great. But then you also give the other team an opportunity to score, and if they score if they get a 2 point conversion, then the game's over. So in that sense, yeah, it probably wasn't the best idea. But again, if you only hold them to a field goal and you only kick a field goal, then you get the ball back, and then it's basically over at that point. You just have to go down and kick a field goal. And with the way that Moody's leg is, I mean, that guy's got a boot, but it's like a howitzer. You never know where it's going to go, but
mhm.
he can kick it for wherever.
Yeah, I think hindsight's, always 2020. And as the 49ers players said in the post game, they didn't really, talk about, or some of them didn't even necessarily know the new rules when it came to the overtime. But, Shanahan said they talked about with the analytics team, and, they wanted the chance to have the ball third and stuff like that. But I just feel like that's putting like a lack of confidence in your defense. I think that, you know,
I mean, that's putting
with
a lot of confidence in your defense. I'd say lack of confidence in your offense.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, like, if you're saying, like, if you guys think you can score because you guys had been able to score the ball, and the only times the Chiefs necessarily really scored in regulation was, off of favorable field position because of the botched punt. Otherwise, they're kicking field goals or the 49ers were stopping them on defense. If you defer the ball and you get a stop and you only force them to a field goal or you get a stop overall, then you have the opportunity to win the game with a field goal or a touchdown, obviously. But as you mentioned, the Chiefs had trouble moving the ball down the field completely for a touchdown drive in all of regulation. So if you give them the ball first, then they only have 3 downs to play with unless they're in plus territory, because, they don't want to try to give you the ball back in good field position. So they would have to punt. In this situation, if since they, took the ball first and they got the field goal, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and Andy Reid and like some of the best play callers had the opportunity to have 4 downs. And as you mentioned, like the first 4 plays of the game, it got to 4th and 1. It was 3rd and 1. They got the stop on Isaiah Pacheco and it was 4th and 1. If that was the situation where the Chiefs had the ball first, they would have punted that. And then the 49ers only need a field goal to win the game. But when you do it the other way around, the Chiefs know that they're going to go for it on 4th down. So you just kind of
Mhm.
have like free money to play with, I feel like, at that point. But I mean, I understand the situation, because I guess a little bit more, because you said Greenlaw got hurt, they were battling through injury and everything like that on the defense and offense. Honestly, Debo and
I
Kittle
mean,
both got
and
hurt.
Kittle, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
But I mean, I think that I personally would have deferred, but I think
I mean,
hindsight's
and
always
also,
2020. So
well, yeah, I mean, deferring would have been just also a counter argument to the math problem that you're running into, where you're trying to score within three possessions, as opposed to the Chiefs, who had four possessions to try and score. So I mean, that's just a simple math equation. You have 3 chances versus somebody that has 4 chances. I'm gonna go with a team that has 4 chances.
yeah,
But again, however,
yeah,
you try and hold them to a field goal, and you've been doing that the whole game. I mean, logistically, it makes sense. But also, the one thing that they didn't add into the equation is that it is a bad man on the other side of the field. And anytime you give Patrick Mahomes an opportunity to go down and win the game, like best case scenario, best thing you can do in that scenario is to not give him the ball. But thanks to the new overtime rules, that's no longer an option. So he's always going to get a chance. And I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, he's going to get the win, as opposed to most players. It's like a, you know, 55-45. I mean, unless it's, I don't know, Kenny Pickett, then it's like, you basically win the game if you score any kind of touchdown or field goal. So,
yeah.
but
And as the Chief said, like it's easy to say now, but like Kyle Shanahan said that they wanted the ball third, and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes both confirmed that if the 49ers would have scored a touchdown, they weren't going to have the ball third. They were going to go for
yeah,
2 regardless. So, and I would have
yeah,
done the same thing if I was Patrick Mahomes. I'm like, I'm in the Super Bowl. I ain't playing this game no more with y'all. I'm done.
legit.
So, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I think that every team besides the Ravens needed to play borderline perfect to beat the Chiefs, or at least beat Patrick Mahomes in the game situation like this. But I thought the Ravens, because of their versatility offensively and their elite defense, didn't need to
And
be.
their ability to run the
49ers,
ball.
yeah, exactly. And the 49ers, albeit they have elite weapons on offense, Purdy is, I don't think, elite. I think Purdy is very, very good. I don't think Purdy's elite, but their defense, even though they have star players, I don't think that they're a great defense. And I think the Chiefs proved that they're a much better defense, especially with the injuries that the 49ers had to battle through. So I think that with that, along with the muffed punt, or the deflection, with the pressure that Chris Jones was able to have on Purdy, where like he prevented him from throwing, I think, 2 touchdowns, and not converting on those 3rd downs, and then the missed PAT, and then the decisions by Kyle Shanahan to not defer the ball. I think those was all 5 points that, albeit in a small sample size, or a small, it doesn't necessarily seem like a lot, but when you add all that up, again, that's all you need to do to lose by 3 to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in the Super Bowl in overtime. That's it. And the
Well,
Chiefs
and
made
I
mistakes
mean,
too.
I was gonna say, and also too, it's a completely different game if Moody's kick doesn't get
Exactly.
blocked. So
Exactly.
it's that, and that was one thing too, that kind of swayed me a little bit. Was I forgot what the exact stat is, but it's basically if your special teams is trash. I think it's like if you're bottom 25 in ranking when it comes to special teams, you usually never win the Super Bowl. And that was one of the scenarios that happened with, that was one of the scenarios that happened with the Aaron Rodgers teams as well. is that they would always have this elite offense and a pretty solid defense, but then their special teams was always hot garbage. And not that, the 49ers special teams was hot garbage, but it was, I believe, like 30th or 29th or something like that in the league, and that was ultimately the reason why they ended up losing the game. Like they muffed the punt, and then they also ended up getting a field goal blocked. Harrison Buckers actually almost got blocked too. If you saw that replay, it was like
Hmm.
millimeters away from getting tipped there. But again, going back to the point I was going to make about Kyle Shanahan and his coaching, he can scheme it up with the best of them, and arguably is maybe second best behind Andy Reid in terms of active head coaches. But sometimes he just, game management wise, he just loses his mind. And I feel like that's something that the Chiefs do to other teams, and they just lose their identity in that sense. So, for example, when they came out and got the interception off of Patrick Mahomes, perfect opportunity to capitalize on it. Could have went up by, I don't know, maybe 14 at that point. They were up
Hmm.
10-3.
At least,
Get the
yeah, at least
interception.
10.
Get the interception. What do? They've been running the ball the whole game. They're having success with it. Now let's pass. Okay. Start off with the incomplete pass. Okay, what do we do next? Okay, penalty. All right, well, let's throw another pass. Okay, another incomplete pass. Okay, what are we going to do next? Okay, we're going to scramble with Brock Purdy 4 yards. Okay, well, now we got a punt. Okay, they go
Hmm.
down. They stop Kansas City again. Kansas City punts 3-and-out. Nice. Okay, what do we do next play? They drop back to pass, throw it to Juwan Jennings again. Oh, loss of 8 yards. That's not good. Okay, what should we do next? All right, shotgun. Oh, actually, we're gonna dump it off to Christian McCaffrey. That's a nice idea, but it's another pass, and then pass game after, or the play after that, another pass incomplete to George Kittle, and on that play, Debo got hurt, and so I mean, you see right there, first 6 plays of the second half, all passes, not a single run, and that was one of the main things that they were having success with on the ground. And they just lost their identity at that point, and they weren't able to take advantage of any of that field position that they were given by Kansas City off that opening interception. So I
Yeah. To your earlier point about the special teams, that was something that Tony Romo and the broadcasters had talked about pre-game, saying that the Chiefs had the major advantage in special teams. And it didn't look like it in the first half because the 49ers were very good on special teams, especially when they were punting to the Chiefs. They downed them at the 1, and then they had the big tackle.
mhm.
And so they looked very good. But eventually, it came to fruition. And as you mentioned with the PAT and the botched punt. First of all, I don't even know how the returner saw that it tipped, because in real time I couldn't even see that it did tip. I thought he just went to grab it for no reason, and you could see
Yeah,
that it did kind of ricochet off his calf or his leg and stuff like that. So I mean, I guess that's good eyes on him in that prevented, I guess, for them to have like a walk-in touchdown. But yeah, the special teams really did kind of let the 49ers down. And then, as you mentioned, I didn't necessarily mind. Like, obviously, I think that, especially compared to the Ravens, which was terrible, I think the 49ers, tried to run the ball a good amount. And we've talked about it before. I don't know what I don't think Christian McCaffrey is human. But
yeah,
the Chiefs actually were able to hold him pretty well. He had 22 carries for 80 yards, which is about 3.5 yards a carry. So they're able to stop him pretty decently. So I don't know why they necessarily stopped going from the run, because even though they weren't getting great yardage, a lot of the times they're at least kind of able to stay right at or ahead of the sticks. But I think that it goes back to the first half where they were taking advantage of the Chiefs. They were running the ball and they basically had control of the game. But then you look at the scoreboard and it's only a one-score game. So I don't know if that got in their mind. They're like, okay, well, now we actually need to try to, create some more separation. But I don't know why you would pass the ball as much as they did in the third quarter, as you mentioned, which has led to, like, I think three and outs. And then, they just kind of started to fall apart a little bit, but it was right there. But Brock Purdy, as I mentioned, again, I think played good. 255, 1 touchdown, 70 QBR, and basically almost a 90 passer rating. But when they needed touchdowns, they got field goals, and when they needed field goals, they got 3 and outs, and it was not enough. And again, this goes to, I think, the unsung hero of like this situation and of the season is like the Chiefs defense. We've talked about it all season and how great this defense actually was. Sometimes Drew didn't want to give it the credit that he deserved. Like, oh, they actually only ranked the ninth according
no,
to
hey
the
man,
defensive rating and all that kind
I
of stuff.
I gave them their
McDuffie,
flowers. I gave them
yeah,
their flowers. All right.
they play phenomenally, and didn't give up more than 28 points all year, only gave up 25 in the playoffs. And, it was a changing of the guard because, again, we're so used to Patrick Mahomes and airing it out and having Tyreek Hill in the past and all this kind of stuff. And now they've actually, become a very balanced team that just so happens to have the GOAT. So, you have this great defense, and then you have Isaiah Pacheco, who they can lean on, who, even though he didn't have a big game, he was able to, you know, establish a little bit of a rhythm. And then Patrick Mahomes using his legs. People are talking about Brock Purdy from the Lions game. Patrick Mahomes with some huge scrambles on 4th and 1 on a QB option, same play that they ran in the first half. And then I think he had 9 carries for 66 yards. And, him being able to use his legs and being able to be versatile, I think really kept the 49ers honest and, kind of won them this game. And then last play of the game, it was kind of gross because they showed a replay. I'm like, there's no way that they ran the same play against the Eagles and they just ran it to win the Super Bowl against the 49ers. And then, yeah, Andy Reid said it's basically corn dog, a little bit of ketchup and mustard,
Bruh.
ball game,
Yeah.
ball game. So,
That's so gross. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's craziness to see how it's like you gotta bear with me with this example here. Okay.
okay.
I was
Okay.
watching, we're gonna go on a little bit of a tangent. We're gonna bring it back. All right, I promise.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching the Iowa Nebraska game, women's basketball over the weekend before the Super Bowl and everything, right? And it was a great game. Highly recommend going back and watching that. But moral of the story is what they found was whenever teams are playing against Caitlin Clark and Iowa, they just lose their identity and they just start bombing threes. They take like terrible shots because they just see, okay, well, we're down by, whatever it is. We need to start doing something. And clearly, whatever we're doing right now hasn't been working. And clearly, the other teams that have tried to play them and try to do this thing didn't work either. So we got to act crazy. We got to do something out of the book and outside the box. And so they just start bombing threes, and that's not even their game. But this time they ended up winning. Going back to San Francisco and the Bills and Baltimore, they lost their identities at points throughout the game, and that's ultimately what ends up causing teams to lose against the Kansas City Chiefs. Is that they you see a clear path to victory, right? You see that Buffalo, they were running the ball and doing it very successfully. They arguably should have maybe won that game too.
They
Um,
deserve to win that game.
yeah, and but they just didn't have the right personnel, and they, a ball goes a little bit too far. Josh Allen misses a pass wide open in the end zone. One thing leads to another, end up losing the game.
Couch
And then you
potatoes
go to
on
Baltimore.
defense.
Exactly. And then you go to Baltimore. They only end up running the ball 16 times, only 16 carries. And of that, I believe they only had 6 carries by their running backs in the first
Mm-hmm.
half. Um, and or actually, it might even been for the game, honestly. But ultimately, that's not going to win you a game. And that's the only way that you're able to keep the ball away from Patrick Mahomes is by holding on to it. And then also, if you have a successful run offense, you're going to be successful as well because you're not going to be able to pass the ball on this Kansas City secondary. And newsflash here, those are sophomore players. They're not just like, oh, aging vets out there in the
They're
secondary.
young all
Like, yeah,
pros gonna
so
be.
like they're gonna be there for a minute, so you better start figuring something out because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise it might be another three-peat out there.
Yeah.
And unless you want to see Travis Kelsey, Viva Las Vegas again, then yeah, you're gonna have to run the damn ball. Um, I mean, it the 49ers did their best. They at least, ran it 31 times, which is nice to see. But shame on
Yeah.
you, Baltimore, for running the ball 16 times as
Yeah,
the number 4 team.
the
Unbelievable.
49ers they didn't pull a Baltimore in any way. As we mentioned, they did try to establish the run. It was just I just don't think that it was working as well as they thought it would. And even though again that they were seemed like they were in control of the game, it when you look at the scoreboard, it didn't look like that. They were only up by one score. So I mean, like you use
It was
Christian
kind of
McCaffrey.
just like they should have scored. I think it was like the opening possession, or maybe yeah, it was opening possession
Yeah,
where
C-Mac
McCaffrey
fumbled.
fumbled the ball. Like they were just burning them. They were just
Mm-hmm.
going down the field doing whatever they wanted, and KC had no answer. And at that point, it was still looking like 49ers were okay. This is the 49ers that we knew beginning of the season, and okay, they're actually back. And then they fumble the ball, or Brock Purdy missed the pass just barely, and then they end up going 3-and-out on this drive, and then getting close. But then they had to get a penalty, and they got bit by penalties quite a bit in this game,
That's
and
true.
then that pushes them back, and then okay, now we can only do a field goal, or we're outside of field goal range, now we have to punt. So yeah.
Like, because, like, I don't know, because we talked about how, the 49ers defense, albeit I don't think it's like as elite as people thought it was, especially given the talent, were able to hold the Chiefs to, 22 in regulation. But the same, I feel like, could be said for the Chiefs. Like, even though the 49ers seemed like they were in control of the game, they did have the fumble by Christian McCaffrey on the first drive. The real touchdown that they had in the first half was off of a wide receiver back pass from Dwan Jennings. Should have been, MVP if 49ers would have won. I'm just playing.
I mean, yeah, I
But
mean,
so I'm saying, like, things weren't necessarily like as I don't think things were as great for the 49ers with their game plan of trying to, run the ball, because they ultimately ended up getting stuffed in the red zone. And as I mentioned, Chris Jones, they were in the red zone twice, and Chris Jones got pressure on Brock Purdy, who had a wide open Debo streaking down, and then they had a wide open Juwan Jennings, who they missed. So it was a lot of, I don't know, a lot of unfortunate. And C-Mac had 30 touches. He had 80 and 80, which is kind of
yeah.
crazy for a Super Bowl. They said the first player in NFL history to do that. And they only averaged 3.5 yards a carry. So, like, again, was the run really working that well? Christian McCaffrey's biggest run was 11 yards, and I think other than that, his biggest run was 7. So I'm just not exactly sure. I'm just trying to figure out the mindset of the 49ers. It's like, okay, this is what the recipe or formula is supposed to be to beat the Chiefs. It's not necessarily really working. So we're going to try to, air it out a little bit. And as we mentioned, even though Brock Purdy didn't make mistakes, he did not capitalize when he needed to. And, you need touchdowns, not field goals against Patrick Mahomes. So that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah.
It was a weird game because, again, I feel like, as you mentioned, I feel like the Bills could have beat the Chiefs easily. I feel like the 49ers could have easily won this game. It's just that, the Chiefs, I don't know. They just basically force you to beat yourselves. It's not necessarily that they do something crazy miraculous. It's like almost like they just lay back. They're like, okay, we got this. We're down by double digits in the Super Bowl for the 4th time in the past 6 years. It's okay. We're just gonna wait for y'all to make some mistakes and we gonna capitalize.
It's literally the Floyd Mayweather tactic, just defensive boxing. Like you just okay, well, nope, can't hit me, miss me, bop, bop. Okay, miss me, bop, bop. It's literally that's all that they are right now, because they don't have their high scoring offense anymore. That's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But they do have a lot of young talent on the offensive end, that could be up and coming and could potentially lead to another high octane offense. Um, Now I got a question for you. What would you say about Patrick Mahomes? I'll give you 4.5 Super Bowls. I'll set the line there. Would you go over or under that?
Over.
Over. Really?
I think he finishes his career with 5, which, if he does, I think he's the GOAT.
I mean, I'm just saying. If you look at Aaron Rodgers, like,
What about
see
him?
how he's been to Super Bowls and every time and everything, and he's had opportunities to win when he was younger, and then he kept on going, and he kept on not winning, and he kept on having opportunities to go, and then not quite making it.
I think Aaron Rodgers, he only went to 2 Super Bowls. He's 1-1. I think that he has, like, the talent of Patrick Mahomes, but I don't think that he necessarily has the poise and the clutchness all the time of Patrick Mahomes. I think that Patrick Mahomes is like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady had a baby. That's what I think, because I think that Patrick Mahomes he can make every single throw, but I think that he's poised, especially in the clutch moments, like Tom Brady. Like if you were in a Super Bowl against him and he had the ball, you know, we tried this year. We gave it a really hard try, but Tom Brady's going to win. So that's how I feel like with Patrick Mahomes. I feel like everybody thought that once the 49ers got only 3 in overtime, they're like, well, the Chiefs are at least going to get a field goal, and they're probably going to go score a touchdown. And, the 49ers had him on 4th and 1, and what did they do? Again, they did the option play, and Patrick Mahomes ran for 15 yards. And then what happened on like 2nd and 6? He scrambled for like 25 yards. It's just like he finds ways to win, and I think that, given that he's only 28 years old right now, and given like, I'll be generous to say he plays plays till he's 35, so 7 more years. I think he can win 2 more Super Bowls in the next 7 or 8 years. And if he does that, then I don't really know what argument you could have, because, you can be like, oh, okay, Tom Brady, he has 7, 5 is less than 7 or whatever like that. I think that you could just use the eye talent and see that Patrick Mahomes is just different. So, what would
Mhm.
you say? Would you say under 4.5 with the betting man that you are?
I it's tough because again, I'm done betting against Patrick Mahomes. The last time I the last time I bet against him, well, actually 2 times ago, because the last time I bet against him when he was an underdog was the Baltimore game, which I'm still not over. But the time before that was against Tom Brady, and that was when I was like, F Tom Brady, I hate that guy. And, it Patrick Mahomes didn't have an offensive line at all, so he was just running for his life the whole game and never really
Yeah, it
had
was
a
bad.
chance.
Yeah.
So, and of course that had a sour taste in my mouth for betting against or betting on him as a dog. And that's again why you don't bet against Tom Brady. That's why you don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. But to answer your question, uh, it's it's tough because he's not going to be able to keep the same team that he has forever, right? And so
That's what I say
as
about Tyreek Hill.
as well, yeah, but as these players get older, as the players in the secondary get older, their contracts are going to get a lot more expensive because they're getting a lot better too. So they're not going to be on these rookie contracts where they're basically paying them, nickels and dimes. You're going to have to start forking out some money to get these elite caliber players. And I think it might be more likely that he wins it with another team as opposed to staying in Kansas City, because also I don't think Andy Reid is going to be kicking it around for, say 7 more years or so, for him to get another Super Bowl. I mean, 2 more Super Bowls. And same thing with Travis Kelce too. If Noah Gray
Yeah, I think,
somehow
yeah.
turns into, the next Travis Kelce, then that it definitely helps. But at the same time, you're gonna have expiring contracts. You're gonna have people that are gonna be lost to free agency, and you can only, carry so many. I don't want to call them scrubs, but carry so many below average players before you have to find some elite talent. And Tom Brady always had, at least he had Gronk, or at least he had Mike Evans, or he had at least 1 or 2 high caliber players on offense that helped him out. Uh, Granted, a lot of the times his wide receivers were made because of him, and he made them into better receivers and then gave them a name. But at the same time, it also kind of helps when you have Randy Moss, when you have Gronk, when you have, well, I don't want to say Aaron Hernandez, but it also kind of helps when you have him too. So, and Wes Welker and Julian Edelman, like the list goes on. But again, those are receivers that fit into the scheme perfectly. And when Andy Reid leaves, I just don't know what's going to happen there. So I think it is possible for him to get to 5 and maybe even more, but I don't think it's going to be on the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I thought that, I was being generous with 35. Based on how quarterbacks are playing now, like I genuinely think that
He
he
could
could probably play
be
till he's
60.
40. I genuinely think that 40 is fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be another 12 years. So to say that like he can't get 2 more in 12 years is crazy, because people are like, oh, they're about to three-peat, even though they're, already betting second place for the 2024. Like the 49ers are already, I'm so mad. They're still underrating these Chiefs and stuff like that. This is ridiculous. The
Okay,
49ers
well,
already came
like
out as the betting for, I don't care. Travis Kelce already said he's
mathematically
coming back.
speaking,
Andy Reid's not going nowhere. Their contracts are fine,
mathematically
as you
speaking,
mentioned.
Alex, you're a math guy. You,
I don't
you
care. I don't
like
care. I don't care. It's rude.
okay.
It's rude. I'm a math guy, and I said that they shouldn't have been underdogs against the Bills. They shouldn't have been underdogs. Well, they should have been underdogs against Ravens. Yes, they should have been underdogs against Ravens. But once they beat the Ravens, who mollywopped the 49ers, why is the line coming out at 2.5? That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. I'm not a huge betting guy like you, but I still think that's trash. But anyway,
It's just based on the numbers throughout the whole season. Can't just take a 3 game sample size and be like, well, how are they, underdogs?
what are you talking
It's
about? The,
it's
the
based on
49ers
the
almost
full
lost to the
game sample
Packers and
size.
the
Yeah,
Lions.
exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying.
They look like
That's a three
trash.
game sample size. That's a
It's the
small sample
playoffs.
size compared to the whole body of work that they've shown the whole season.
Yeah, the whole body
And
of work showing that they can be
no,
elite, but they can also
no,
go on a 3 game losing
stop.
streak and lose to like the Cardinals or like the
Yeah, well,
Bengals
you
without, you know.
factor that in for sure. But, based on the whole body of work, the 49ers should have been favorites in that situation.
You
Now,
know, it's the whole body of
the,
work. Patrick
oh
Mahomes'
my
6 year
God.
career. That's
Okay.
what
All right.
that's what the whole body of work is. I think that you already had injuries, and Christian McCaffrey dealing with his injuries, Kittle dealing with his injuries, Debo already dealing with his injuries with his shoulder before that. But regardless, I think that at least for the foreseeable future, I think that Travis Kelce probably plays. I think next year is probably going to be his last year. So there was already speculation talking about that he was going to retire with Jason this season, and I think that if they would have lost the Super Bowl, he might have done that. But he wins that Viva Las Vegas. We going for 3P, baby. And then Andy Reid's not going anywhere for the next, I think, at least probably 2 or 3 years. I would say. I don't know what his situation is. Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick so they're starting to phase out these older um, these older coaches, but Pete and Bill are more defensive minded. Andy Reid still has a new, fresh, innovative offensive mind, and that's what he does best. So I wouldn't be surprised if he stays there for a while. I don't see Patrick Mahomes going anywhere. I think that obviously he has a 10-year contract and he still has like 8 more years left in the contract, but I don't think that the Chiefs are going to do anything to I don't think he's going anywhere. I do agree about the Travis Kelce situation. Like if when Travis is gone, it's going to be very hard because I think that he does so much for Patrick from a versatility perspective. And without Tyreek, the only thing confidence it gives me is because they were able to do it without Tyreek Hill. They're still able to figure it out, like the most versatile
I mean,
weapon
you still
offensively.
have. It's not like they just had nobody. They had.
They won. They did not have a single player with Travis Kelce over 1,000 or a single receiver over 1,000 yards. Isaiah Pacheco or none of their running backs had over 1,000 yards, and they just went ahead and won the Super Bowl with like the most drops in the NFL with all of these
Oh
things
yeah,
going
I'm
against
not
them.
saying that they. I'm just saying they still had Travis Kelce, and that makes, like you said, a big difference. And Rashee Rice came on towards the end of the season there,
Yeah, I think
and
Rasheed's going to continue to improve too. And Tom Brady won without Gronk, so
yeah, I guess,
But
I
people are
guess.
saying that they think that this Chiefs should go out and get like a big name receiver in the offseason. I don't know cap space how they would necessarily be able to do that, but I mean, continue to develop Rishi Rice. You're at least going to have 1 more year. Travis Kelsey. You have free agents like T Higgins, like Mike Evans, like Calvin Ridley. So those would feel like would be the big names. But I don't think the Chiefs necessarily have the money cap space to go out and throw them a huge contract like some of these other teams do. But I think that, with a starting lineup or a starting receiving group of last year with Juju and Marquez Valdez Scantling, and this year with MVS and McCole Hardman, who the Jets of all people, Zach Wilson and the Booty Jets, we're like, okay, no, we'll trade you. We can fine, just get out of it. The Chiefs
Hey,
are like, okay, we'll take him, and we're just gonna throw the game winning touchdown to you because you've been in this offense and you know how to play with Mahomes. So I think that they, I don't. I think Tyreek Hill's a great player, obviously, and Travis Kelsey's a great player. But other than that, they ain't playing with no other All Pros on offense. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, and like I was saying about Tom Brady, like he, and it's also the LeBron effect too. They are goats because they make their teammates better, not just because they themselves are good, but they elevate the play around them as well. whether that means that they're passing to the their teammates in the perfect position to where they know that if I pass it to them a little bit in front, they're like they like to catch the ball there, or like when I
Hmm.
pass it more off to the left side, that helps them get their shot off faster or whatever.
Hmm.
Knowing that those little small details about your teammates help rise the play of your team to another level. And that's why Tom Brady has always famously mentioned that if a player on your team gets hurt because of a pass over the middle or a pass that you threw, that's your fault. That's not on the DB for hitting your teammate like that. That's on you for throwing the ball in that area, putting them in that vulnerable position. Like you have ultimately all the control of where you want to throw the ball and how the uh, your teammate's going to respond to that. So I think um, that's ultimately what Patrick Mahomes has going on right now, is that he's elevating the play of those no name guys, making them into somebody, or making Marquez Valdez Scantling finally catching a ball or to seal the game against what was that, against the Ravens,
Hmm.
or finally getting a touchdown in the Super Bowl or whatever it is. So I just think that he can elevate the play of scrubs, but it sure as hell would help to have some actual, top tier talent other than just Travis Kelce. Because if it's only going to be Travis Kelce, that's not going to work for a three-peat.
Like 3 and
Granted, they
6
said the
years
same
ain't too
thing.
bad for me.
I was like, granted, they said the same thing about a back to back, but
Mhm. Just say. Also, side note, like Isaiah Pacheco, we both really like Isaiah Pacheco and like the cocaine runner that he is.
yeah.
The 49ers were stuffing him at the and they had like third and ones, fourth and ones, stuff like that, and they were
Mhm.
they were really
I don't know why he just kept
plugging this
on
hole.
like, all right, 4th and 1, what are we gonna do? All right, Isaiah, it's up to you. Even though you haven't been able to get
Legit,
by
that's what I'm
anybody,
saying. That's what I'm
I was
saying.
like,
Like, albeit the 49ers defensive line is probably one of the best, if not the best in the league. But I mean, yeah, he was getting stuff, and it was pretty bad. So, side note though, what do you think about the other side of the coin with this quarterback situation, Brock Purdy? How do you feel like he played? Do you think that he has played himself into a major, arguably max contract, top five contract, because they're going to have to resign him coming up here probably within the next year or two, and then obviously you have all of these other key pieces with Christian McCaffrey. You already have Bosa on the big contract. Debo, Ayuk's going to want his bag. Kittle, all that kind of stuff. So like, where do you go for the 49ers from here?
I mean, in terms of, you know, just a quarterback, just pure quarterback, I think obviously the kid can play. It was the biggest moment of his career, of any quarterback's career. And being Mr. Irrelevant, all the odds stacked against you, people expecting you to fail, and you showed up, took care of the ball, didn't turn it over, and ultimately you end up, going over your passing prop because it went to overtime. Um, I just think that he is a very solid quarterback, but I mean, there's no denying that he's a system quarterback for sure. Not for sure, but like he does
They're schemed open. I'm
benefit.
sorry.
Yeah, I was like, there
He was making some good throws. He'll
there
put it.
was
He'll drop it in the breadbasket. But yeah, they're schemed.
yeah,
Yeah,
he does benefit from having players that are just happen to be wide open every so often. um,
the
but
best player options in the league.
oh yeah, and I mean it also helps if you have like 5 Pro Bowlers on the offense to
Yep.
get you open. And then if you have big Trent Williams protecting your blind side as well, that also might help a
The
little
other
bit
side
as
of the
well.
offensive line didn't look too good though.
That's fair. At least it's in his face though. But
Right.
in in terms of uh, like turnover worthy plays or big time throws, he was seventh in the league in terms of big time throws. However, in terms of turnover worthy plays, he was where was he on here? He's 12th in terms of turnover worthy plays. So, it's one of those things. It's it's not as bad as the Jimmy Garoppolo effect. You get good Jimmy and you get real bad Jimmy. well, even though you had some real bad Purdy, and it really wasn't Purdy, no pun intended, always pun intended. But it was ultimately only those games where, again, it was raining outside is when he had those terrible games, which is kind of ridiculous that, you know, like you can be a quarterback in the NFL and have like one of the highest passer ratings going into, like the end of the season or whatever, and all of a sudden there's even a drop of water outside and it's over. You turn into, I don't know, like Jacoby Brissett, or Jacoby Brissett probably would have been just fine out there,
Yeah.
but
He got
I don't
small
know.
hands.
It's
It's okay.
that is true. But yeah, so I think ultimately, going forward, Purdy is going to be a solid quarterback in the league. He did
Where
end
do
up
you rank
leading the
him?
league. Huh?
We've been big on rankings this year. Where would you say he ranks? You say top 15, top 12, top 10?
It's tough. I definitely top 15.
I'd say top 12. I'd say he's like right
I
between that 10 to 12 range. Because even though he's had better production, he's been an MVP finalist and stuff like that. It's because of the skill players. I feel like it's because of Kyle
let's
Shanahan,
see.
and I think that there's other players that even though they haven't necessarily had the success that he has had, I would still want as my quarterback. I don't know if I want to go down the line or not, but I think there's at least probably 9 quarterbacks, that I would probably have over Purdy. But I think that
Hmm.
he has,
I mean,
every,
okay.
you know,
Wait, hold on. I I think I would go. I want to say top.
yeah, but say no.
12 is a good number. 12 is a good number.
Yep,
I'll say
yep,
12 is a good number.
top 12.
Because you got Tua, you got Josh Allen, you got Dak Prescott, obviously Patrick Mahomes, you have
Lamar,
yeah,
Burrow,
Lamar, Burrow, um,
Justin Herbert.
yeah, Herbert. I my my inner self is telling me that I can't in good faith have Matthew Stafford above him.
Stop
Um,
it.
I
God. Matthew Stafford. I'd rather
I
have
don't
him.
know.
I'd rather
I
have Jalen Hurts. I'd rather he in my eyes is like right, like top 12. So like any given day he could be like sometimes he could be 6, sometimes he could be 12. I think he's like right in that.
I I'll
I
say
think him
I'll
and
give him
Jared Goff
nine.
are like very comparable. Like they're like right there for me. I think him and Jared Goff very similar, in how I
I'll
value
say
them.
9. 9 is where I'll rank him.
And I mean, you even have Kyler's coming off the ACL. Kyler fully healthy, I'd rather have than Purdy.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So yeah, I think top 12 is fine. But yeah, so
Hmm.
it's very unfortunate. It's always sucks with the Super Bowl watching when they pan to the other team and them the players on the sideline or the coaches and all that kind of stuff, because you're just like, wow, the 49ers just can't get over the hump. And as we've talked about it before, it's like, when you play in the Jordan era, all these great players, all these great teams and stuff, you just happen to be in a situation where you have Patrick Mahomes, that also plays in the league, and you have to go against him and try to beat him. So the 49ers are now 0-2 over these past 4 years against him. Kyle Shanahan is now 0-3, 0-2 as a coach, 0-1 as a coordinator, and has had some double digit leads in every single game, and has had some major flaws and errors from a coaching perspective, from a time management perspective, from a play design perspective, that just necessarily prevented him to come to fruition as a champion. So it is very unfortunate for them, and I think the 49ers window is closing, because I think that their players aren't getting any younger. And at this point, like, they aren't super young. In 2020 when they lost, they're like, okay, Kittle's still super young, and he had just come on as like probably one of the best tight ends in the league, and Debo's so versatile, and now Brandon Ayuk has transitioned into probably like a top 12 receiver in himself. But now they're all getting older, their contracts, and C-Mac's a robot. The C-Mac probably can do this until 2040, but
Bruh.
the window's not open forever, and all these other NFC teams are going to come back stronger. And I think that, yeah, I don't know. I think they're going to, if they're not this offseason, if next offseason they are going to re-sign Brock Purdy, I don't know what other position or situation you can pivot in, unless they want to franchise him. But I don't know if they want to do that, because I don't know if they consider him a top whatever receiver, and he would be paid for as a top 5 receiver if they franchised him. So, but top 5 quarterback. But yeah.
Hmm.
Was there anything else that you wanted to cover in this Super Bowl?
No, that's pretty much it. Ultimately the the Chiefs end up winning the Super Bowl and covering the spread. And then also the game. This is actually kind of funny. In some places, the total got down to 46.5. So if you waited to take the under, you got screwed because it landed
Mm-hmm.
exactly on 47. We got it when it first came out at 47.5. So was I sweating bullets when the game was going into overtime? And then I was like, oh my God, they're going to score a touchdown and they're going to score a touchdown. And then we're going to lose this on some BS. Thank God that they're able to get a stop. And Brock Purdy had a bad throw into the end zone when they had, I think it was Jawan Jennings or somebody, or no, it was Ayuk that was open in the end zone if he would have taken one more second. But we were able to cash that as well. And yeah, they undercashed and the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes, Super Bowl MVP, arguably should have been Harrison Butker instead, but that is neither here nor there. So,
Where do you rank Mahomes all time now? I don't think he's above Tom Brady or anything like that. I think that's ridiculous. But I think that, I think that I wouldn't be mad if you put him number 2 over Joe Montana. I mean, I wouldn't be mad.
so are we just going only quarterback or like
Yeah,
all positions
only
or
quarterback because I don't know about you get into
is
all
it back in
positions. Yeah,
1922?
you get the Barry Rices and the Lawrence Taylors and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Quarterback wise,
yeah,
which I feel like is kind of like tier of their own. I think that even if you are like a top 3 quarterback, technically I feel like you would still be ahead of all the other skill position players or defensive players. But that's just me.
yeah. I mean,
3 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowl MVPs,
I
2 league
so
MVPs, all
I think
pros.
it's got to be like a recency bias kind of thing to where you see you grow up watching a player in your era, so you just say that is the best player that I've ever seen play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the maybe not for you, but for me, it's the same thing with LeBron. I think that he is the best player that I've ever seen because he is the best player that I've ever seen in my lifetime. I
Mm-hmm.
never got to grow up and see Michael Jordan, but
It's
if
unfortunate for
you
you.
okay, yeah, because you saw him. Okay.
It's unfortunate, man.
But
Sorry.
yeah, okay. Anyways, so I think it's one of those scenarios too, is where you're going to have your own biases towards that player that
But
you
I'm not
grew up
delusional.
watching.
I'm not saying that
Okay, okay.
Mahomes is better than Tom Brady. I still think Tom Brady's the
I
7
think
Super
I
Bowls is
think overall,
ridiculous.
yeah, Super Bowls are great and all, but I think as an overall player,
As a talent, I
I
think he's the best.
I
But
I think I think that I would take Mahomes over Tom Brady. Now hear me
mm-hmm.
out because of his versatility, not only when it comes to passing the ball, but also when it comes to running the ball. Sure, Brady had some pocket mobility. That's great. And he also had his little, 1 yard over the top.
Hey,
That works too.
He is like 1,000 yards rushing for his career.
Is he really?
Yeah, I think so.
That's gross.
All the QB
But
sneaks and stuff. Or
did
no, literally.
it 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think that as a talent overall, Patrick Mahomes gives you the best opportunity to make multiple kinds of plays because he can make all the same passes, maybe not all of them, but a lot of the same passes that Tom Brady would make, and with fairly good accuracy as well too. Now, does he make a lot of bonehead mistakes too sometimes? Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
He's a gunslinger. It's gonna happen. He's got a little bit of Brett Favre in him,
He's
but
gotten much better though. He's gotten
yeah,
much better.
yeah. But I think you give that man a top 5 defense, and there's not going to be a whole lot of teams that are going to be able to compete with you on a nightly basis. So
Yeah, I think with Mahomes Brady debate, or even if you want to bring it to Montana, I think that recency bias does come into play a lot when all these people are saying like, "Oh no, he is the goat," stuff like that. I think there's a difference between the goat and the difference between like talents or best player that you see, and I think that Patrick Mahomes, I don't think many people would argue, is the best talent wise quarterback that we've ever seen. It's just the greatness of Tom Brady when it comes to the Super Bowls, when it comes to the clutchness over 2 decades, is what defines the greatness for me. I think Patrick Mahomes is the best, or yeah, most talented to do it. But like, if you want to talk about talent, I think that Aaron Rodgers, talent wise, is more talented than Tom Brady too. But like, you know, it's the fact that Mahomes has been able to do it with the talent, and he's also had, at least in his early career, this success. And you're like, oh, this is a recency bias, but that success is comparable to like every other quarterback in NFL history other than Tom Brady. Like, he's one away from Montana, and basically that's it. It's like him, Aikman, Montana, and Brady, and like that's pretty much it. So that's why I said, like, if he gets to 5, I think that then you could have the conversation. Not the conversation. I think I would deem him the GOAT, the greatest of all time, because it would be a combination of the success, which I feel is close enough, along with the talent, which is far better, I feel like, than Tom Brady. So that's how
You wanna
my thinking is on it.
do you wanna know something funny? I just randomly looked this up because I was just
Hmm.
curious. So I filtered on RBSDM runningbacks.matter.com.
Oh my God.
Um, I filtered it all the way back to when they started collecting data on this website, and that was
Mm-hmm.
2012, all the way up until now. And I included the postseason with everything up until the Super Bowl as well. And if you go based on EPA per play, the number one quarterback, Brock Purdy,
Hmm.
over the over the past 10 years. That's hilarious. But if you go, and number 2 is Patrick Mahomes,
Yeah.
and then number 3 was Aaron Rodgers. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of interesting just to see like a quick and dirty breakdown of the different quarterbacks over the past 10 years or so, and what they've done not only in the regular season but also in the Super Bowl era. Super Bowl era in the Super Bowl, because the Super Bowl era was like 1956, but that's neither here nor there. Um, but yeah, and then if you go a step further there, uh, you have Tom Brady at number 4, um, and my boy Drew Brees at number 5. So
And nobody wants to talk about Drew Brees. It's okay.
okay, whatever.
But yeah, so unless you have anything else about the Super Bowl, we can unfortunately transition to the rest of the NFL, because, football is basically over. So prior to the Super Bowl, we did have a lot of coaching vacancies and openings, and they're basically everything has been filled. The most notable one that we did have was Jim Harbaugh just going on to, win the NCAA championship, and then just going to go back to his roots and going to the Chargers. So he is now the head coach for the Chargers and is getting paired up with Justin Herbert. So what were your thoughts on that? Do you think that, this will finally allow the Chargers to compete in the AFC West against that GOAT over there in Kansas City?
I mean, anything is better than Brandon Staley. So like you and I, you and I could have gone out there, got a head coaching job, and then we would have put together a pretty solid game plan, and not just like pissed away the games at the end of the uh
When you're
end of the
calling
fourth quarter
cards
and stuff.
defense too, that's so bad.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I think that he, like I said before about the Ravens, which ended up working out in our favor, but Harbaugh's just win. It doesn't matter how they do it, whether it's legal or not, they just win. And I have I have no doubt in my mind that um, they will be, I don't want to say contenders, but I will say that they'll at least
Playoff
be
bound?
100% playoff bound.
Okay.
I mean, I'll put my life savings on that. No,
Oh, don't do that.
no, it
Please
sounds
don't
like
do
it's
that.
still the Chargers. It's still the
I'm
Chargers.
gonna take the shot. They should be second in the division. I'll give them that. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
translate into a wild card, but they should at least be better than the Raiders and the Broncos.
Yeah, and I mean, as long as if they're able to keep the talent that they have there, I have no doubt in my mind that they will
They
at least
should.
win 11 games.
Yeah, Herbert's obviously there. Keenan Allen said that he's already talked to Harbaugh and he plans on coming back. Don't know what they plan on doing with the Austin Eckler situation because he was only signed to his 1 year contract, which was a little bit more than a franchise tag. He seemed to kind of lost a step. He had a couple flash games, but he did not
Yeah,
look 100%. Still
no, he looked
have
slow.
Mike Williams with, made of glass. And then I don't know what they want to do with Quentin Johnson.
Quentin
Was
Johnson.
Quentin Johnson? Quentin Johnson with like
Yeah.
probably the out of like all 10 of the top, receivers drafted this year, he was the worst. Um,
hmm By a
so
long shot.
by a long shot. And then they do still have pieces on defense. Still have Khalil Mack. Still have Nick or Joey Bosa. Still have Derwin James. Not sure how that contract situation is going to work with everybody, but at least you have some pieces to work with. You have some pieces to work
hmm
with, and as you mentioned,
Yeah,
anything's better than nothing.
exactly. And I mean, last year they were 24th in EPA per play. So they're one of what, 7 teams. Uh, that's bad math. One of 9 teams in the NFL that whenever the offense on the other side ran the ball or ran a play, they were expected to score on a better percentage of plays than they were um, by not even running a play at all. So it just goes to show that anything, literally anything, anything is better than what they had last year.
I think that
Granted, granted, they said the same thing about the Broncos. So
Yeah, I hope that he's able to fully, unlock the potential of Justin Herbert because we know that we talk about talent. He's a great talent from a quarterback position, still young, a big guy, even though he's battled with some injury himself, and he can basically make any throw. Has a ginormous arm, probably only comparable with Josh Allen, but like I think that he's in that tier of quarterbacks that we understand how talented they are, but it hasn't really come to fruition or hasn't really done anything with it. Kind of like a Trevor Lawrence, even though I think they both made the playoffs once. So like, or even if you want to throw Dak in, or you want to throw Kyler in, like, and I'm
I
not
don't know
saying
if
like
Trevor
they're
Lawrence
all the
is good.
same type of play. That's okay, but I think that he showed at least in the first half of the season that I don't know because ETN was balling, but regardless, because
Mhm.
every single time. Whenever Justin Herbert's had success, you look at the stat lines like, oh, Austin Eckler 9 receptions for 104 yards with 2 touchdowns and all this kind of stuff. So like I think that both of them are in that kind of situation, but neither of them have necessarily been able to take a step forward. So I think that with the Chargers hiring Harbaugh, it kind of just like a perfect match made in heaven with him being a former player there. And I think that, of all the coaches that were available, that he probably was the best option or the best fit, especially for the Chargers, and the one that makes the most sense. So I hope that, he can finally fulfill the potential of Justin Herbert and the Chargers, who I think have, been the notorious, oh my gosh, look at this team and their potential. Let's not do anything. Let's miss the playoffs type team. So, I mean, at least the
Yeah,
Cowboys make the playoffs.
that's what I was gonna say. They're basically like the Cowboys, except they don't have hopes of winning the Super Bowl. They just have
Yeah.
hopes of making the playoffs and
The Cali
being half
Cowboys.
decent.
There we go.
hmm Cali Cowboys.
Additionally,
Yeehaw.
as we already mentioned, Antonio Pierce got his much deserved contract, re-signing with the Raiders. Uh, one of the biggest things was the person that does not have a job, or the people that do not have a job, and that is Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick, as they are no longer with the Patriots, no longer with the Seahawks. We kind of have heard the writing on the wall midway through the season about Bill Belichick, so that wasn't a surprise. But the Pete Carroll one was actually a pretty decent surprise to me. He had his post press conference after the season, and you could see how emotional he was about everything. And they just kind of want to try to pivot into a new position with some younger talent. And now I can't remember the coach's name, but basically he is now the youngest coach in the league, the new Seahawks head coach. I'll pull it up in a second. But what were your thoughts on Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick? Bill Belichick not only getting let go by the teams, but going through this whole cycle of coaching hires and not getting a single job, because they're probably not going to be a coordinator anywhere. So now they basically have to wait a whole season until they could potentially go and find another position as a head coach.
It's Mike McDonald too, by the way.
Mike McDonald. There you
Um,
go.
yep. I mean, you know, you got another defensive guy, and that's great and all, but I just I get the idea of taking a chance on somebody different, and somebody that hasn't done it before, um,
With the
because
Seahawks.
Yeah, for the Seahawks.
I like the hiring.
Yeah, is it's I, I don't know. It'll be interesting because he's from the Harbaugh tree or whatever you want to call it, um,
Mm-hmm.
and
That
that'll
that
be
defense
good.
was elite, historic.
Yeah, and also they're probably gonna have the similar foundations of what Pete Carroll was trying to do, where it's
Yeah,
basically run the ball and play defense
we got
and
pieces on
don't.
defense, Drew.
Oh hell no! And
Witherspoon,
so,
Woolen. Come on now.
oh boy, here we go again, guys. He's doing
Yeah.
it again. We need to
Yep. You sound like a
shut it
Cowboys
down.
fan.
Exactly.
This is our
Um,
year.
but yeah, I don't know. I agree with you though too that it was kind of shocking that they got rid of Pete Carroll when they were basically one game away from making the playoffs, something like that.
Literally.
Um, and so it's sure maybe it's a whole lot of mediocrity by the Seahawks over the past few years. Maybe they're just tired of being stuck in the mud, and but I do think that weren't they talking about Pete Carroll moving up to like a front
Upper
office position or
management.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Possible.
So so maybe it was more along the lines um of he wanted to move out and give somebody else an opportunity while he takes a higher position, and then maybe in a year or two comes back and does the coaching thing.
I thought about that too, but then after watching that press conference, no, I think he was as surprised as we were, and he said that he still has a lot of youth left and a lot left in the tank, and still wants to be a coach. So then I was like, oh, maybe it's not a front office transition. Maybe
Well,
he's
I
just out of
mean,
here. So
again, maybe it's like you take a year off, like same thing that happened with Sean Payton. He took a year off, came back, and then started coaching again.
yeah, I'm sorry. Sean Payton is overrated. I'm sorry. No, it's not even has to do with anything about Junior Saints. I'm sorry. All right, oh my gosh, Pete Carroll has had. I would understand if it was like a Bill Belichick situation, and he went. Even though Bill Belichick does not seem like the TV personality type, but he took a hiatus from football. He took a year or two off, and then he had all these coaches calling him, and everybody wants him to come in and be their position. That didn't happen with Bill Belichick, probably the greatest quarterback of all, or greatest coach of all time. But Sean Payton, who won a Super Bowl back in 1972, gets all of this attention because he had Drew Brees as his quarterback for basically the entirety of his career, and people act like Sean Payton is God. I don't understand. And like I don't. What has Sean Payton done that Pete Carroll has not? Yeah, that's what I want to do. That's the only thing that I feel like it's like offensive
He ran
minded
the ball on
quarterback.
the 1 yard line.
Shut up. Off same amount of rings. Offensive minded coaches, I feel like, are more valuable no matter their age than defensive minded coaches. And I don't understand. I do understand, but like I don't think it necessarily should be that drastic. I think that, as we mentioned, Andy Reid, older coach, um, you know, offensive guru, even though he's not the offensive coordinator, he still has a big key in calling the plays and stuff like that. Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll do call a lot of the plays on defense, even though they do have defensive coordinators. But none of them are getting any of the attention or awe that Sean Payton was getting. So I just don't understand. That doesn't make sense to me. Make it make sense, Drew, Mr. Sean Payton lover.
I mean, I got really nothing to say about him. I mean,
Okay.
he's a solid coach. I think that in terms of scheming up plays for the Saints when he was back there doing that, he
Mm-hmm.
did a wonderful job, and he always put them in positions to win. I want to talk about having no kind of offensive firepower. The teams that he had early
What?
on in the no, hold
Oh.
on, hold
Oh,
on.
okay.
Early on,
Okay.
I'm not talking about like recently.
Oh, okay.
Um, I'm saying, yeah, early on when they were throwing to, or when they had Deuce McAllister running the ball, when they had the likes of, I mean, Marcus Colson he was that dude. But when they were
Jeremy
throwing
or
it
Jimmy
to,
Graham into the chat. I
yeah,
mean, like
Jimmy Graham was
Reggie
okay for the
Bush.
Saints. He was pretty good. Oh yeah, Reggie Bush ended his career. His last season that he had, I think he had negative rushing yards,
Yeah.
and so and I love Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush was the reason why I became a Saints fan.
Mm-hmm.
So, but for the most part, the talent that they had on those teams was not very good, in terms of top tier talent. Like Marcus Colston was great, but he was more so just of like a a poor man's version of Michael Thomas.
Yeah,
Run a 3 yard slant and then that's it. But they
yeah,
always found a
yeah.
way, and their defense was always solid. But then, you know, one thing led to another. People getting on fights on the sideline, and then Sean Payton was like, "I need to get the hell out of here. These motherfuckers are crazy."
He's like,
So,
you know, he's like, Drew's out, I'm out because he tried this 1 year without him, and this stuff ain't working out. But I mean, like,
hmm
talked about earlier, but like you had those still a good amount of players, and the good players that you did have are very good. And then you go back to the
hmm
recent years with the Camaras, with the Michael Thomas, with obviously you still had Drew Brees, but I just don't get the huge appeal. Like I understand why the Patriots moved on. I understand why the Seahawks moved on. And as you mentioned with the Seahawks, it's kind of those situations. Like every single year, the Seahawks were making the playoffs, but we were like either a one and done or we made it to the second round. That's basically it. And that's like a terrible position to be in the NFL. And that's just by many standards mediocre at times. So I understand the move, but I was surprised that we went through this whole coaching hiring cycle and neither Pete Carroll or Bill Belichick even seemed like finalists for any of the positions out here. I'll be it granted, a lot of the positions like, maybe the like the Panthers head coaching job and stuff like that, or the Titans, they probably were like, nah, you could take my name out of that from jump. So I guess you could only say that like, the Chargers, maybe the Falcons because of just like the weapons that they have. I mean, I guess you could say there are only so many, up, intriguing positions, but I digress. So,
yeah.
we
And
had Jerry. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say one of the main things too with Bill Belichick, like one of the main problems was that he wanted too much control over teams and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was likely that he wanted to bring in his old boys, be the old boys club again. Um, Back when he had, I want this offensive coordinator, I want this defensive coordinator, and string along all these different coaches that he's had with them for years, so he can just puppeteer them around and then run the same offense that he's been running for years, which clearly does not work anymore unless you have Tom Brady or another elite quarterback. So that's my thinking behind why he didn't get a head coaching job. And I forgot who it was. It might have been Micah Parsons or something. I don't know who it was, but somebody, one of the like a major superstar. They were like, you know, a Hall of Fame head coach, and arguably the best head coach to ever be a part of the game. Had 6 opportunities to be hired, and nobody wanted him. And then you had like the eyes emoji looking, and
Mm-hmm.
so
Little shade, but yeah, there was a lot of I feel like reasons for that. I think the Chargers would have been the best job. Um, I probably would have taken Harbaugh in that situation as well over Belichick, and then the other ones weren't necessarily the most appealing ones. The Commanders do end up hiring Dan Quinn. A lot of controversy with that situation because not only does he have the interdivision change going to the Commanders, he chooses to bring in Cliff Kingsbury. I can't remember where he was coaching in college, but former Cardinals head coach. Good offensive mind, and basically phase out Eric Bieniemy as offensive coordinator. And I think that of all people other than the 49ers in this situation, I think Eric Bieniemy is kind of like just saying back, just like, damn, like I don't know what it is about the NFL. I don't know if they hate him. People say that he's not like a best interview or whatever the case may be, but it seems like he can't catch a break. And a lot of people have said that, oh, he's a potential head coach in the making with how well he was calling plays for the Chiefs, and then he tries to go
mhm,
to the Commanders, which is basically just like a level transition because he stays in the offensive coordinator role. But a lot of people assume that once Mike Rivera was out, that he would come in, but
Ron
they
Rivera.
chose to Ron Rivera. They chose
Mhm.
to pivot in a different direction, and he lost his job entirely. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's I hate how people use that as an excuse for why they didn't hire him. Oh, he's just not a good interviewer or whatever. If
mm-hmm,
you have somebody that I don't know is I don't want to call him Michael Jordan, but maybe like I don't know Robert Ory. If you got
mm-hmm,
Robert Ory on your team and you have an opportunity to get him on your team as a difference maker, and you're like, oh, well, he doesn't test well, and I don't know if I want him. I don't give a damn if he can't test well, he can't talk. It doesn't matter. You
He has
get
the
that
best
man, you
resume
get the
of any
talent.
coach that's been hired over the past 3
Exactly.
years. So
Yeah. And so
politics.
it's yeah, literally. But I don't know. And also too, if you just are like, oh well, you saw how well he did with Washington, you try and have Sam Howell as your quarterback, and then you tell me
Hey,
how well you do.
hey, it looked better than the year prior. I actually watched
That's
some of the Commanders games, and like their offense was
ew.
not terrible. It wasn't terrible. Hey, Sam,
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while they go against a team that has some of your fantasy players, so got to check in every once in a while. But their offense did
That's
not
fair.
look terrible, and yeah, I think it's really weird because I do think that he has the best resume out of most of the coaches that have been hired over the past few years. Obviously, from Andy Reid and the experience, and a lot of people. One thing, other than the bad interview, people say that he wasn't necessarily the one calling the plays or calling the majority of plays in Kansas City, so he kind of his success was kind of watered down from a coordinator perspective because they're like, well, Andy's actually the one calling the plays. I'm like, okay, so you just think that
Mm.
Eric Bieniemy's just twiddling his thumbs on the sideline, just
He's
making
just
copies.
hanging around.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't understand. So it also kind of sucks too because like he leaves and then the Chiefs don't miss a beat and then they go back to back Super Bowl champions. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Not a
kind of
good look.
not a good luck. So he didn't get hired anywhere else in the coaching cycle. So as we mentioned, Mike McDonald got hired by the Seahawks. Raheem Morris ended up becoming the Atlanta Falcons head coach. What was the Arthur Smith, the
Yeah.
coach from?
Yeah, that's your
He was
boy,
terrible.
Arthur,
No,
mustache
the
man.
man that does not know how to use like the most versatile back in the league. He's like, you know what? Nah. And then also, like, I think they got fined like I think $150,000 total this season just because of the fact about reporting injuries with Bijan and all that kind of stuff. There's like two
Hmm.
times where he's like a full healthy and then he basically does not play at all, and they're like, oh
Hmm.
well, I mean, he has a tummy ache. I forgot to report it. Like
So
what? I don't
yeah, I
understand.
forgot he was sick. Sorry.
So that was completely interesting. So he's a defensive minded coach. So they do have a lot of young players on defense. And then I think that if they can go in the draft and find a decent quarterback, that they have a lot of pieces offensively, whether or not you think Kyle Pitts can, live up to the hype, which I don't think is possible at this point, given that he was drafted so high. I don't think he'll ever be able to live up to being the highest drafted quarterback in NFL history, especially when you have all these other great tight ends. But you'd still have Bijan, you still have Drake London. Obviously, Algier is still a great, um, you know, piece as well. So, yeah,
You still have that quarterback situation too with Desmond Ritter. So I don't.
that's what I'm saying. Like, you got to go. That's what I said. You have
Yeah.
to go in the draft. You have to find somebody. I don't care what. Actually, I
Hmm.
do care, but like, I don't know what draft pick that they have right now, but they need a quarterback. So, Dave Canales ended up being hired as the Carolina Panthers head coach. I would not want that job at all. That's I think you're setting yourself up for failure with that situation. But I mean,
Falcons
I'm
have
not a
the eighth
football
overall
coach.
pick.
Okay, you can get a quarterback with that. Hey, go get Penix. Go ahead, go get him.
Bro, you guys should be trying to get Penix, right?
Yeah, but
Seahawks.
like his draft, I think we're in like the late teens or 20s. Like his draft stock has risen too high at this point. People are saying he's probably going to be like the second or third off the board because it's going to be like Caleb Williams, Drake May, then probably Penix, then McCarthy late in the first round or something like that. I hope we don't draft McCarthy because I think that I don't know what the Seattle's going to do either because Geno's not the answer. I think Geno's a good quarterback, but that's the problem. We don't need a good quarterback. We need a quarterback that I don't know what Geno is. I don't know what Geno is. I think Geno's Brock Purdy. I think Geno's like Brock Purdy. Geno is Brock Purdy. I think Geno Smith could be just as successful in Kyle
As
Shanahan's offense as Brock Purdy is.
I feel like you're being disrespectful to Brock Purdy now.
I think that Brock Purdy is. I don't know. Brock Purdy is somewhere not in the middle. He may be a little higher or in the middle, like Jared Goff, Geno Smith, Brock Purdy. It probably goes. Would you rather have Jared Goff or Brock Purdy? I'd probably give a slight nod to Brock
Probably,
over Geno, but would you have Jared Goff or Brock Purdy? I'll take Jared Goff. Brock Purdy's
yeah. I mean,
versatility, his legs have been surprising. But that
I mean,
versatility is
based on like this year, um, I mean, do I also get Ben Johnson?
No, just
Okay, well,
pure quarterback from what you've seen,
um,
given all the situations. Because even though the 49ers have good weapons too, so do the Lions.
that oh man, I mean,
I
Jared
want to give
Goff
the nod
has
to
gotten
Jared
a
Goff.
lot
It's just the
better.
fact that Brock Purdy, his mobility has been he's actually pretty quick. So and
Hmm.
Jared Goff ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have to go with the slight edge to Jared Goff, but only because I've seen him be pretty damn good. And I really haven't. I mean, obviously, I saw Brock Purdy this year and a little bit of last year as well, but I just I'm not sure how much of it is scheme as opposed to how much of it is just the play or yeah, actually him and
Hey,
being
the
the
second
player.
greatest show on turf with those Rams, they were saying it was like the boy wonder with Sean McVay in his first couple years with the Rams, creating this great offense with Todd Gurley and Cooper Kupp and
Yeah,
Robert Woods. So
well,
like they
that's
had
what
some
I'm
pieces
saying.
too.
That's what I'm saying is like they're basically the same person, right? Because they
But Brock
like
Purdy can run. It's just how I'm saying.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. So it's like, Jared Goff is trash unless he has a perfectly schemed plan or play for him.
or if
But
he doesn't have pressure.
yeah, or if he doesn't have pressure and if the game's inside and it's not on the road and it's at home,
Yeah, and Brock Purdy's the
then
same way. Or if it's not wet, or if
yeah,
all.
as long as it's not rain outside, yeah.
But Jared Goff was the
So
number one overall draft pick, and Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. So it's kind of
yeah.
crazy dynamic. That is pretty much the all of the coaching hires within the NFL. So was there anything else that you wanted to get into for this last season before we transition to the NBA?
No, I think that's pretty much everything in terms of the NFL. Let me see if I can pull up our young record on how
It's
we
been a
did.
been a great season.
Um, yeah, it was mighty fine indeed. So we ended up going um, netting 14.22 units on the season, 57.67%, going with 94. Wow, that's not numbers that I'm reading. That's binary. Anyways, we went 94. We went 94, 64, and 5. I always hate the push. Pause. With an ROI of 8.72% on the season in the NFL. So, again, if you would have stuck with us, you would have been very successful this season. Hopefully, next season we can give out some more winners as well. Um, and yeah, on to the NBA.
Facts. On to the NBA. So, as you know, known from earlier in the season, John Morant did go on his 25 game suspension, came back, and then immediately basically got hurt for the rest of the season, had surgery. Completely different situation here, but it is kind of crazy because, Joel Embiid, MVP
Oh wait,
favorite.
actually,
Hmm.
sorry, we're gonna have to back up. We're
Okay,
gonna have to back up.
go
I
ahead.
misread some things.
Okay.
Um, so what I was reading off there for the NFL, that
Hmm.
was based on only the sides and totals, not including our props and everything like that.
Ah.
Um, including and there was also some teasers and stuff that we played too. So taking all that into consideration, we actually ended up I was like, I feel like we had more bets than that. So it was actually 145 and 107 and 6 pushes. I hate to push. And we ended up going 56%, 56.2 if you want to be exact, with an 8.07 ROI, netting 20.59 units overall. So that was the NFL season for us. And in terms of the props and everything like that, it let's just say
There's a
props
reason
aren't our thing.
there's a reason we
Yeah,
stopped after like week eight.
we shut that down. Yeah, we ended up losing 6.97 units because of props, negative 10.69 ROI. So we'll 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 cool it on that for next year. We'll maybe only do like one or two per
Lamar.
week or something. Yeah. So, yep.
If I were
But
to choose one
anyways,
MVP, a player pause for both of us, I think it was Mike Evans. He was
dude, for
pretty
real.
solid for both of us.
Yeah. I'd say Mike Evans and David Montgomery.
Yeah,
Those are
I
probably
did
the
not make
two
one
main
bet
ones.
on David Montgomery, so that's all.
Oh, it was just me. Okay. Fair.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
that's all I got.
Yeah. That's all I got as well.
So, yep, this has been the Call You Shot podcast. Everybody, thank you for listening. With your hosts, Alex Harris and Drew Moore. As we mentioned, it's been a great football season. So, all of you that did listen throughout the year, we appreciate it. So, we are going to continue with basketball and, may transition somewhere else. But if anything's happen in the offseason when it comes to the NFL, we will keep you updated. For those of you listening to the podcast, we do have an Instagram, CYSPOD, that has the links to our YouTube and player picks. So, anything else, Drew?
Viva
Okay.
Las Vegas.
Okay.
Viva Las Vegas.
Yep.
That's all I got.
All right.
Catch you on the next one.
See you next week. Oh my God.
Peace.